Savvy Young Professional podcast. My name is Tanida Mullen, and in this episode, we're going to follow the journey of a young professional. The show is called the Savvy Young Professional podcast. And so what I wanted to do was really talk to somebody who was out there living their life as a young professional. So we're going to talk to somebody really special in this episode, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight on what it looks like to actually work in a job that you love, but also start your side hustle and keep that going. You're really going to enjoy our guest on this show today. Make sure you stay tuned, and I'll see you on the other side. All right. Okay. So welcome, Savvy Young Professionals, to the Savvy Young Professionals podcast. This series is, like I mentioned before, we're talking to real young professionals. It's Real YP Week. We're talking to people who are just like you, on the ground, on just working and living their life as a young professional. I have a pleasure to have Kian Hervey on the show today, and we met through social media, actually. But she is a young professional out there just making it happen, and I thought she would be perfect for you guys to get into the mind of and really kind of ask questions or just get into the mind of a young professional. That's going to get edited out. So welcome to the show, Kian. Why don't you give us a little introduction just about you and, you know, your business and even just your 9 to 5.
Yeah, sure. So, hey listeners, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Hi, Kian Hervey. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. I graduated from Southern Methodist University with a degree in journalism. And I started working in corporate America literally after I graduated. It was just a crash course, very hard and furious, at one of the Fortune 200 companies in the U.S. So I work for Southwest Airlines as a publication specialist. And I've been there for 2 years. So it's a very rewarding experience to be in a corporate environment that is very fun-loving. I'm sure people that have flown Southwest know that we are the fun-loving airline. So it's a very same experience when you're working in the corporate environment. But in that journey of me starting working at Southwest, I realized, you know, it is a corporation and there are expectations of you as a young professional. Just because you have your degree doesn't mean you're fully equipped to navigate corporate America. And so that's when I really started 40 Magazine, and that's 40, FORTY, magazine.com if you want to check us out. And it's really about working 40 hours a week. So we're intended for recent grads and professionals under 40. We cover young professional life on and off the clock. Because really when you start working a 9 to 5, when you start entering corporate America, your lifestyle changes. It's not only that, you know, you're not going to class anymore, you don't have Thirsty Thursdays anymore. It's like your idea of a great night out might just be going and hanging out with friends for happy hour and calling it a night. So it's just a completely different lifestyle when you enter corporate America. And so that's what 40 Magazine came about, was just helping people navigate that space. A lot of my friends, seeing the success I had right after graduation, kept coming to me and asking me questions about, hey, you know, why isn't my resume getting a second look? Hey, you know, my boss said this to me. What should I do? And just all these situations that my friends started coming to me for. And I told myself, you know, what I'm going through is no different than anybody else. And I'm not the expert on this, but why am I being selfish with this knowledge? And I'm going to share, you know, what I've learned from working my 9 to 5 with more people. And just help everybody as we are on the ground floor, like you mentioned, and starting out our careers. There's really no guide for it. And I wanted to create a platform where we could share those experiences and really kind of demystify what it's like entering corporate America and working the 9 to 5 life.
Wow. That is a pretty interesting story. And, you know, what I really like about it is that you kind of went through this process, which I think a lot of people getting out of college do. You know, they get into the world and we're just like, oh, well, this isn't really how the textbook said that this would go. And so my first question to you is, you know, let's just back up a little bit back to your college days. What were you expecting when you were walking across the stage, getting ready to graduate and get your first, you know, adult job? Like, what was your expectation?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I went to Southern Methodist University. If you look us up on Urban Dictionary, we are affectionately known as Southern Millionaires University. So the expectations are pretty high for students coming out of SMU and even internally for myself. But majoring in journalism, I also had this reality check of I could be stationed out in Odessa covering a news story, or I could end up I know some of my friends ended up in Ardmore, Oklahoma. Some got lucky and made it in New York, but it's just a very competitive market, journalism, in terms of reaching the success that's kind of expected of you, and just kind of internalized, I think, by anybody who wants more out of life and wants to be ambitious and is a young professional who's chasing something. So with that mindset, I kind of pivoted my approach to job hunting. I said, what I have and the skills that I've learned in journalism apply to corporate America. I just have to find the space where it fits. So I was very fortunate. And again, just being in Dallas, there are so many Fortune 500 companies based here. I literally just went to their websites and searched my behind off. And I interned at Southwest 2 times. That's how dedicated I was to getting a job there. And then eventually that internship turned into a full-time gig. So for me, it was that, before I even crossed the stage, I had a game plan about where I wanted to end up. And the way that I navigated that was just being proactive and seeking out opportunities and even trying out things where I knew I didn't necessarily want to do it. I think about my college experience. I interned with the Armed Forces Bowl when it was based in Fort Worth and sponsored by Bell Helicopter. I really didn't have a passion for sports writing, but I wanted to try it out. So I did all these experiences in college that kind of let me know, what, I do like working in the 9 to 5. I do like the security of being with a corporate environment. And, I like to wear my suits and heels. So let me go ahead and look for something that fits, my passions and what I like to do. And the rest was just up to hard work and making it happen.
Wow. So it sounds like you had a really good idea before you even stepped foot off of their college campus, university campus, that, you kind of knew how to navigate. Like, I need to get in there. I need to kind of do some things that maybe I didn't think I wanted to do, but I need to get these experiences. And so it sounds like you're pretty savvy really early in your career.
Yeah. And that's, again, just based upon my upbringing. I think about my mom. She set a phenomenal example of what a young professional is. I mean, she started off at ExxonMobil, and they back in the 80s, and that was the heyday of gas and oil companies. So she rose very quickly in her position and got a lot out of those corporate experiences and transitioned into another role at a local university, being chief financial officer. So just seeing that example really kind of put it in me that, again, that bar was set high for me before I even got off the stage. While I was in college, I had that kind of mentality, like, I want to be, just as great as the example that's been set before me, and really empower my friends and the people that are around me in my network to do the same and know that they can do it as well.
Right. Really good. And if you have her in your circle, guys, you're pretty lucky if you listen to this podcast. That's a great mentality. So let's talk about your corporate job. I know that there are layers and there's all kinds of things that go into working in the corporate atmosphere, but you knew early on, I like that lifestyle, and you knew, that that's where you wanted to be. So talk to me about your first experience with that, even outside of the internship, just day one as an employee.
So I think day one as an employee, that went back to school for me. And my first kind of corporate and professional experience was working at the Dallas Morning News. And that it was an internship, but they treated you as a full-time employee. And, if you looked at my bylines in the paper, it said staff writer. So I took that very seriously. And just day one, walking into the Dallas Morning News, everybody was in the suits, like I was mentioning. It's a very formal organization, a very long history here in Dallas. And I was so timid. Like, I think back about how I was and what I was stepping into. I remember just kind of being overwhelmed internally, of course. I'm not going to let my boss know that I'm scared, but I just remember being a bit overwhelmed by just the weight that the organization holds on its own. and to realize that you're a part of something that is way bigger than yourself. You're a part of something that is impacting potential millions of customers, no matter what job you're working in. If you're working for Wells Fargo, if you're working for Fidelity, any organization, it's bigger than your individual task and assignment and your job itself. And then also knowing that in that mindset, you're replaceable. And that really was kind of my mentality from day one. And just having that in my head kind of pushed me to present myself as a professional who could handle the job, who was up for the task. And anything that was thrown at me project-wise, I was like, yeah, sure, I can do it. I may not be able to know how to do it, but give me a few days, I'll figure it out, do some research, ask people who have done it before. That was always my mentality with any task or assignment I was giving was my answer isn't no, my answer is I'm going to figure it out. And so that was what it was like day one. It's just the whole being overwhelmed and then also realizing that I need to figure it out. Not that I want to, but I need to because I'm replaceable. So that's kind of my day one experience, I think. And then the first few months as I'm getting into that role, understanding what's expected of me at that job, and then moving on from there and taking it to the next level in terms of what I deliver in terms of projects and tasks that are assigned to me.
You said something that was really key. You said that I had to realize that it was not about me and that it was much bigger than my particular task, project, beat, whatever it was that you were doing. I think a lot of the times the perception is that young professionals, they do think it's all about them and they don't necessarily think about the bigger picture. So it was really good to hear you say that. How important do you think that is in building success and even building a successful career early on?
Yeah, I think that's really why I started 40 Magazine was because I realized some of my friends didn't, and my friends, I mean peers, coming from a huge intern class at Southwest Airlines. I think my class had 150 people and maybe 50 of us were hired. So, it was a very slim pool in terms of who's going to transition from this intern role into the full-time gig. And those of us that made it were the ones who did have that mindset that what I'm doing is bigger than anything else. And Southwest, we are so about hospitality. So if you're able to do your job with warm, loving service, then that's, golden. And that's really what makes you stand out as a professional. So it is all about mindset when you are in a corporate environment, when you're in any professional environment, especially when you're young. I hate to say it, but the expectation is that we're not hard workers, especially with our generation. The expectation is that, like you said, it is all about us. But when you come in there with a mentality like it's not just about me, it's about my boss. I want to make them look good. I want to make myself look good. I want to make the company look good. That's really where you're going to be able to get ahead and get noticed in your career.
Exactly. Really good points. And that's so true. And I just had to make sure that we put a little light on that because it's very rare that you hear people say that. And it's, to me, in my opinion, I totally agree. I think it's the number one key to success. You have to look outside of you and your own personal, hang-ups or goals or whatever and try to figure out what's for the good of the group. That's, right. The fast track to success, in my opinion. So you're at Southwest and, you're in there now and you are, enjoying, obviously, just hearing you talk about the company. You obviously love what you do. How did you get to really switch gears to the life of an entrepreneur? Because that's what 40 Magazine is allowing you to do.
Yeah. And again, I'm so thankful for where I work and the role that I have as a publication specialist. What I do is largely electronic distribution. So that is it's just managing the electronic distribution of required for flight documents is what we call them. So in that electronic distribution role, I really have been able to learn a lot about how people consume information. Are people going to read a memo that's 3 pages long, or do they want the memo that has bullet points and numbers? And just kind of that has helped me so much in terms of creating the magazine and thinking about, where people are. We are such a mobile community as we're moving into the century, and just thinking about there are kids who don't even know, why the hang up button on a phone is, an actual phone. Like they have no concept of hanging up except for clicking end. So it is just a completely different age that we're living in. And 40 has just kind of been able to come out of that mentality of being in the electronic world and realizing that, I love magazines. I love them to death. I read them to cover, but I can't think of the last time I physically picked up a copy of a magazine. Like if I really am honest with myself, I'll read it at the counter when I'm checking out. But if I can get it on my tablet, if I can get it on my phone, if I can swipe on it while I'm, in line waiting on something, that's what I'm going to do. And so that's what 40 really came about when we started. And this is on our website as well. The title said 40 hours because we were really just focused on 40 hours a week. And then as we progressed in our brand, we realized, 40 wants to be a digital resource for young professionals. So we are online 24/7. We've got social media. The magazine is digitally distributed. So really Southwest just kind of helped me think about how do people consume information, because really what I'm doing at Southwest is all about helping people consume stuff that's required for their job and their role. And 40 is the same thing. It's just geared towards, my experience and then also the experiences of others. That's really something that I'm passionate about for 40 is it's not just me running it. It's not just my words. It's young professionals from a variety of fields and industries, and they're all sharing their experiences in an engaging way. So it's visually appealing. The text is great. Just all this content and the way that we consume it is completely different. And being at Southwest just kind of helped me see that there needs to be a change in how we consume information, really. Just thinking about that kind of pushed me to be like, there's this void and let me fill it. Because there really was nothing for me. And I'm sure there are other people who are seeking something out. So I wanted to create something that people could come to and easily accessible. And it just was great that my role at Southwest helped me get there.
And that's a really solid point. I just love the fact that you took where you were at, your situation, and you really helped you pivot into a business. What do you think that people in corporate situations need to think about as they are getting exposed to these opportunities? What are some of the questions they need to ask themselves? Because I find that there are situations where people get stuck and they don't even really realize, like you did very early on, that there are resources at your fingertips that can actually help you kind of pivot into something different, or, start something when you do get off of your 9-to-5 that's actually going to motivate and prepare you for maybe your next job, or just push you straight into entrepreneurship. So what do you think? Where do you think people miss the mark when they are working at these Fortune 500 companies?
I think that goes back to the whole realizing that your value. I think about that in terms of I knew I was a great professional. So you have to realize you have something to offer where you are. No matter what your position is, or if you're not really satisfied or you think the work is beneath you, like you have something to bring to that job that nobody else can bring. And when you tap into, hey, I'm the best coder that there is at this company, I can code in like an hour faster than anybody else. Why not pivot that into be like, hey, I spent an hour working on my work stuff. Let me code for a nonprofit who really is trying to develop an app. Taking the skills you learn from your corporate job can easily translate to helping and serving others. I think that's always been my passion, is realizing that it's bigger than me and that I'm here to help others along the way. So, and if that's helping yourself by starting a business, go for it. But everything, it all comes full circle. You just have to really, I think like what you said, pay attention and not miss the mark. And I'm trying to think, how did I not miss the mark? And it was just, I've always had this whole like two dreams. There's never, I think that's the thing that people tell us all the time is like, you can't work a 9-to-5 and be an entrepreneur. Why not? There is nothing that says you have to just work your 9-to-5 and be exhausted and burn out and think that that job is killing you. your job is helping you. Like, your job is providing you with healthcare. Your job's providing you with resources. Be grateful. There are people worse off. I think we get so stuck in thinking it's about me, and poor me, but it's not. We all have this opportunity, and we just have to take advantage of it and look at what you're doing at your job and say, what do I like about this? Focus on the positive, and then take what you like and build upon it more. Do I like doing this, in my free time, or do I just like doing this part of my job? And then think about that, like, okay, what job could I do this more in? So if you need to say, hey, I need to change positions because this job does this more often, then that's an easy switch internally. You just have to kind of be positive and pick what you really like and what you love about your job. And then that'll help you pivot and find more satisfaction in your professional and off the clock life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you this question. I want you to be honest. And I know that's like, I don't want you to throw anybody under the bus by any means, but I definitely want to know, you work in this corporate world, you have this amazing magazine, and these two lifestyles, they definitely mix at some point. I'm sure you get inspired every day that you go to work, and you probably have a notepad where you're like, oh,
I
my
do.
goodness.
And like, this is a great post. Like, this is a great,
Exactly. So tell me, what are some of the things that you notice? Where are areas of opportunities for young professional, being that you have this platform where you do educate young professionals or just professionals in general, and then you work in this really well-known and great company, actually known for their people. What are some of the areas of opportunities that you think young professionals have? Now, I'll tell you, I don't like to say the word weaknesses. So when I say areas of opportunity, that's actually what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay. I think for me, it's always and especially when I was first starting out, my biggest area for opportunity was slowing down, just acknowledging that, hey, I want to be a manager, but I'm not going to be a manager right now. I have to give myself time to grow into that role. I have to give myself time to grow as a professional and not rush it. I think that was my biggest thing is, especially coming out of college, you're like, I should be making 100K right now, or I should be making 80K right now. You don't have the experience. Let's be honest. You don't have some of the things that other professionals do have, especially if you didn't intern or take advantage of your college opportunities. You can't expect the same things. So for me, one of my things that I really had to work on was being humble, and not to say that I'm not a humble person, but really being humble. And, I think of this, the little mantra, stay humble, hustle hard. That's really what you should be doing in your career. And that's something I kind of struggled with in the beginning, especially because I did land a job at a great company. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a Southwest employee. I was feeling myself a little bit. But you had to humble yourself and working hard and paying attention to that time to grow. That's really where I think some young professionals miss the mark in terms of just wanting it right away. There's excitement in the journey. There's excitement and development in taking your time. So enjoy your time. Don't rush it. Be patient. Good things come to those who wait. So that's always my mantra. Just, stay humble, hustle hard, and enjoy the ride. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah. Everything is so fast, and I think it's easy for people to say, oh man, I've been working here a year. I should really own this place by now. It's very easy to say that because everything else around us happens at this very fast pace. So it's really good to hear you say, hey, yeah, I am a young professional, but I also know that I need time to really gain that experience so that I can demand or ask for these certain things later on in my career. And that's really good to know. And hear someone say, because I can tell you, just being on the receiving end, I have those people that will call me up. Hey, I got this career question. Oh my gosh, this happened. Oh, my boss said this. What should I say? And sometimes I'm just like, so why do you think you should own the company on month number 6? You know what I mean? And I just think that you're right. The process is slow, and I can't even begin to tell you how much I learned early in my career, even at the very entry level, like work through school type of jobs, all of the things that I know and I'm able to share or, even give people any guidance on has to do with the fact that I had to go through it. I had to figure it out. I had to, be that person that maybe, I remember almost getting fired at one point, and I was young, but I didn't think, about what was going on at the time. But, it's funny because I always tell the story, but it's still relevant. This happened years ago, but it was just the fact that, hey, at some point you have to be humble about where you are. And the person, that I can think of that I went through that situation with, where like, he's a mentor to me now. Right. And so, yeah, good to hear you say that. So where's that fine line? Because we're talking about staying humble, right? But there's also this drive that you have to have. And at some point you do have to let people know, hey, I got my stuff together. So how do you really ride that line of not necessarily, falling too far back, but doing enough to let people know, hey, I should be on your radar? Right.
So for me, I did, I kind of paced myself mentally. I kind of, and 40 Magazine, we're offering this service, a new hire checklist. Where should you be at 6 months? Where should you be at 9 months? Where should you be at a year? And if you just kind of follow that checklist, that will be available on our website, you can kind of go along and know where you're supposed to be. So for me, it was all about setting benchmarks and saying, at 6 months, I should probably start talking to my boss about, hey, what am I doing great in? Where can I improve? And if at 9 months I haven't improved upon that, then I need to be, focusing on that hard. So I think just having, and it's hard, especially when you have a manager that maybe isn't in touch with what you're doing every day, or you don't really see them. I know there's some remote locations, working from home that kind of prevents that. But I think asking people for evaluations, which sounds kind of terrible. You're like, I don't want to be evaluated, but you don't want to keep working at something that isn't going to be beneficial to you long term. You don't want to keep doing a habit that's not really what the company wants. So I think the way to, know where you are in between, am I getting too close to that line? Is it time for me to cross that line? Is to just have conversations with your managers and be open and upfront and let them know, like, hey, I know I've been here 6 months. What would you expect of me now? And, just kind of having those conversations will really help like, hey, I should be crossing the line right now. Because honestly, you don't really, like, managers want to help you out. They don't want to, stifle you. And they certainly don't want you to just quit on them one day and then they're left high and dry. So just having those conversations with your leaders will help like, hey, it's time to cross the line, or hey, I need to stay back here a little bit more before I really can ask for that raise, before I can ask for that promotion. And that way you're not really blindsided to anything in your career. I think of so many experiences some of my friends say, I didn't see it coming. And, if you would have just taken that time to ask, what's the worst thing they can say is like, no, it's great to get feedback. So just be open to get feedback, constantly seek out feedback, and don't compare yourself to other people, just because they crossed the line at that point, maybe they got the promotion at 9 months. They probably were way ahead in terms of their skill development than you may be. So you can't compare yourself. You need to just constantly have those internal evaluations, have those talks with your manager about, hey, what should I be doing now? And that'll really help like when it's time to cross the line or not.
You're absolutely right. I think about conversations, that I've had, and I can think of times where I've been paid more than someone who's more senior than me, and they're like, how did how did that even happen? Because I asked. Because, I'm not really thinking about what, this person over here is making. I'm thinking about me. And, one of the best things that I can remember getting a piece of advice, I was sitting in a situation where, it was time for me to make more money because I had just gotten some new training. And, my manager at the time, he said, well, Tanida, how much do you want to make? And I told him the number, and he said, well, I can't do that. And, our next conversation was, he was really honest with me. But in that conversation, I asked him, what do I need to do to get there?
Right.
And you have to. You can't be afraid. That is excellent advice, I gotta say. I think you're right on point with that because, we always use the saying, closed mouths don't get fed, and, it's a joke, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the truth. So that's good. And I hope that anybody listening to this podcast from your experience can definitely see that, if you're not going to hustle after it, it won't happen. Somebody else is going to get it.
True. Very much so.
So let's talk a little bit more about 40 Magazine. You've definitely mentioned it a few times. What is it that, what's the overall goal? In 10 years, where do you really see 40 Magazine?
Yeah, the goals are big and I like sharing them. And it's a bit scary sometimes when I think about, where do I see 40 Magazine? But I always think of coming to a campus near you. Our readership is primarily people who are fresh out of college and transitioning into the work world. So I really benefited so much from just getting after it before I even stepped off campus. So I think the next step of 40 is reaching people as they're seniors, reaching people as they're getting their first jobs, and just being there from day one instead of, coming across 40 Magazine when your career is already going a certain way, and we definitely can help you transition to get back on track. But we want to be a part of your professional work experience before you even step off campus. So that's really where I see 40 going, is just being more ingrained into the campus environment and being a part of people's college experience as much as we are a part of young professionals' experiences. So that's really what I see it going, and definitely see it growing. We've got a great list of contributing writers. Our writers change every issue. So I am always looking for new writers and new experiences. So you can just reach out to us via the website, and that's 40magazine.com. And I think it's contact us. There's a tab on there. So I answer those personally. So if you have an experience or a story, like I said, this magazine isn't about me. It's about young professionals walking a very interesting time of our lives. It's the first step into corporate America. It's that first transition to 9 to 5. So it's a totally different life, and we're just here to help people navigate it.
Yes, and I've definitely looked at 40 Magazine. It's beautiful. Just the covers, it definitely speaks to the person who's kind of, really ready to go ahead and grab their career and take that charge and say, what, this is mine to own. And I think it's a great concept. I mean, I feel the same way. We've had this conversation offline before. There's so much that we all experience, and there's different stories that we all need to share to help each other kind of level up in our careers and businesses, and just life in general. And so just to know that in the next 3, 4, 5 years, there'll be people walking around college campuses being able to pick up a resource that they can take with them anywhere, or just, have 40 Magazine as a part of the fold of the brand of a school. I'm speaking into existence because I feel like it's going to happen. I just think that's great, because the more you learn early, the better. I mean, it's just a better experience for everybody. So, tell me let me back up a little bit. I like to always ask my guests this question before we wrap up. If you knew maybe, back then, and back then can mean anything to you, but if you knew back then what you know right now today as we're recording this interview, what would you have told your younger self? Or, what are some pieces of advice that you maybe wish you knew early on before you were at this point in your career?
Yeah, I think I would have told myself, speak up. I think about who I was and how I related to my coworkers. People didn't really know me. They knew like, oh, she gets her work done. She's always on time, like just those kind of things. But people didn't know, hey, she's got a magazine. She's super passionate about this. Nobody really knew my passion. And I think talking to people at my job and just being more open about who I am and, what I love to do, that really opened doors for me. And even just, I think about having those conversations with my leaders and just saying, hey, I really want to do this. So what do I need to do? So I think if I would have told myself back then, I think I would have told myself, speak up. Don't internalize it all day. Don't go home mad about it and frustrated, and get some steps to know what you need to do. Don't just sit there. And I think about my word, I always have this word resilience that's sitting at my desk. And it keeps me focused and know that whatever situation I'm going through, it's just a situation. It'll pass. It'll move on. I have to be resilient. I have to fight for myself. I have to be an advocate for myself, because nobody's going to take care of your career like you are. Nobody is going to fight for your job. Nobody's going to help you move from campus to corporate office like 40 is. Nobody is going to help you along the way. You have to seek things out. And you need to speak up and say, hey, I'm confused about this. I don't know what I'm doing. Help me figure it out. I mean, ask your friends, ask your family, ask people who have been there and done that, and, take their advice. You can try through trial and error, or you can take people's advice and skip the error part. So that's something I think I would have told myself, just to speak up and seek things out. And be resilient. That's always helped me get from point A to point B, and I think where I am now. So I'm so grateful for that internal characteristic of resilience. And it's something that can be developed. And people think like, oh, I don't have that in me. You do. You can just work on it. Everybody has that in them. And especially if you're tuning into this podcast, you're already in the right place. You're already looking for resources. So just keep following that internal drive, and you'll get where you want to go.
Yes, that is a slam dunk answer, people. And you need to go back and rewind that answer. That was perfect. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'm so glad that we connected.
Great.
We didn't really get into the story, but we did. We connected online. And, I really feel like that's a place, if you're really looking, you're going to find the people that you need to connect with. And that's exactly what happened with us. We were both looking for probably people that thought like us or had
right.
ideas like, we have. And so I think it's perfect. And I would also advise people to make sure they do that. So where people listen to this podcast, they rewound it. They're like, oh my gosh, I need more 40 Magazine. I need to know, more about this business. Where can they find you, and where can they find 40 Magazine?
Yeah, so me personally, I am on everything as More Kian. So that's MoreKian, More Kian. That's on Instagram, Facebook, and then I have a WordPress website where you can see more about my professional experience, morekian.wordpress.com. And then 40, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, our primary channels at 40 Magazine. And then we also have Twitter, and then Google Plus, LinkedIn. We're on there talking about our business and how we're strategizing. So if you're interested in thinking like, hey, I want to start a magazine, go ahead and follow our LinkedIn page. We talk about the industry and trends that are going on there. And then Facebook, we're just sharing stories and great reads that we find online, great resources. So if you're looking like, where can I find some information about, quitting my job? Just check us out on Facebook, Instagram, follow along for this journey as we just get into, we're a young publication. I just started it. We're into year 2. This is actually our 2-year month, so that's exciting. So just follow along for this journey as we grow and expand our operation and reach more young professionals and really help them along in their career. And again, that's at 40 Magazine, and then 40 Magazine spelled out all the way.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kian, for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And I know we're going to have more conversations on this podcast. This is just the beginning.
Sure is. Thanks for having me.
Wow, guys, that was an amazing show. Please make sure you follow up with 40 Magazine. Make sure you subscribe to that magazine and to all the social media channels mentioned in the show. I also want to make sure that you know that the Savvy Young Professional podcast and the Savvy Young Professional is on Twitter and Facebook. We are actually on YouTube as well. So if you have any friends and family you want to share the show with, and there may or may not be an Apple or Android user, just make sure to send them over to YouTube so they can enjoy the show and share it with friends and family. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and I'll see you later, YPs.